Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another live edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And, of course, I am your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and it's good to be here with you this evening. Of course, those of you that normally watch the show, you can see that my background is a little different tonight. I'm actually been kicked out of my little broadcast studio corner. I had to relinquish my little studio to my wife, who came home from a trip and was dead tired, and she went to bed. So I decided to move downstairs to another corner. So just ready to go. We'll still have the same great show for you. So we appreciate you joining us tonight. Before we get started, I want to take just a moment to say thank you to our sponsors, of course, and of course, Quest Jewelers from Merrifield, Virginia. And I've talked to you guys a number of times over the last few years about Quest and the things that they have in their store. I encourage you to go take a look. There's the website, questjewelers.com. You can call and give them a call if there's something there that you really like. Tell them you saw us on the show, and they'll be happy to help you. They make some beautiful things, custom made or straight from the showroom. So give them a call. I also want to thank Nationwide IT Services. NIS is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business owned by retired Army Warrant Officer C.K. Park and his crew. C.K. has offices all over the United States as they support a number of contracts, both in the civilian sector and the military. And if your business has a need for performance management, IT, training, security, whatever it is, C.K. and his folks can help you with it. So give them a call, see what they can do for you. I also want to thank Hill and Ponton, PA, a veterans disability attorneys located in Florida. Folks, Hill and Ponton's been around for over 30 years, helping veterans and their families seek what they deserve from the VA. They also provide free webinars and seminars. So check out their website, hillandponton.com. Take a look and see what they can do. And if you think they can help you out, make sure you give them a call. I'll also tell you that they have someone there that specializes in toxic exposures that veterans need to know about. So make sure you give them a call, and they'll be glad to help you. All right, so those are our sponsors. And yeah, for those of you out there in the audience, I want to thank you for joining us as you do each week. Even if you can't join us live, and we get the folks watching the rebroadcast or the tape shows, it's been your participation that's helped us make list of the top 25 podcasts to watch here in Northern Virginia out of Fairfax County. So I want to thank you guys for helping us do that. Well, let's meet our guest tonight. And I want to introduce you, first of all, to Gene Dennis Bomar. And I call him Gene. Gene is actually a 99-year-old World War II Navy veteran and living in Texas right now. And we're going to talk to Gene. I don't want to get too much into his bio because we're going to talk with him about what he's been doing and what he did in the service. But Gene, I just want to take a minute and welcome you and say thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for the invite, Paul.
Yeah, it's good to see you here. And, I'm so proud to have, you on the show. And I know I mentioned your age, but I mean, we just don't get a chance to see many of you guys that served during World War II anymore, especially on some of the shows. So, it's really a pleasure to have you on. Now, I know one of the things I found interesting is that you spent those years in the Navy, and you were drafted, you said, when you were 18 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, I was drafted and went to Dallas, and we had a choice. We could either be in the Army or the Navy or the Marines. I chose the Navy, so I figured as long as that ship was afloat, I would be okay because I didn't like to walk.
So you figure it was better riding on the ship than having to walk everywhere, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, don't feel bad because when I went into the military back in 1980, I had a number of my friends that thought I was crazy because the first thing I did was hook up with the Army. And, they were asking me, what was wrong with you? So yeah, and of course, I've heard guys say the same thing. That's the reason why they picked the Air Force, because they didn't want to be hoofing all over the place. But you're the first one I've heard say you picked the Navy because you'd rather be on the ship than walk.
Well, I spent most of all my time walking, though, even though I was in the Navy.
So you got in when you were 18, and
Yes,
you went to boot camp in San Diego, right?
that's correct.
So what was, I've seen some of the training films with Navy basic training, modern Navy basic training, Air Force. My youngest grandson just finished Air Force basic training a few months back. What was your Navy basic training like back then?
Well, we got a haircut every week. We had to walk on a grinder. I learned to slap a dummy rifle, a wooden rifle. We had to wash our clothes, and when we tied them on the line, they had to be tied with square knots. And one guy in our company failed to do that, and we marched over his clothes for 30 minutes, and then he had to wash them and tie them on the line right. So it was from one thing to another. We went to Camp Pendleton for a rifle practice up there. And I don't know why we had a rifle practice, but we did. And we marched up there, but we rode back to San Diego.
So you had to go to Camp Pendleton to go to the Marine base to qualify.
Yeah, that was a Marine base.
Yeah,
we had to train with a rifle. I didn't have Maggie drawers waved at me because I hit the target every time.
So what kind of weapon were you firing then?
It was an Alt-3.
Okay.
Alt-3 rifle. We didn't have fancy guns back in the 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know the Garand didn't come along till just a little bit later as well. So I was always curious what you guys were shooting when you first started training. So you were how long was your training there at boot camp?
We were there 3 months.
3 months
to finish boot camp.
So I'm assuming that since you were in Navy basic, that you guys had to be able to swim, or they gave you drown proofing training, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, we had to jump off of a diving board 75 feet in the air. And this was the height of an aircraft carrier flight deck.
Yeah.
And you either jumped or the next guy behind you pushed you. So you come off the diving board one way or the other.
Well, you know what? That sounds just like jumping out of airplanes, because you're packed in there so tight, one in front of the other. You don't have time to hesitate as you're going out. The guy behind you basically pushes you out the door and is right out the door behind you. So kind of sounds like the same concept there.
Yeah, the Navy uniform was designed to be a life jacket too. You tie the legs together and swing them over your head and get air in them, and you'd have a life jacket. So we had to learn all the techniques of life saving and stuff like that.
Yeah, all the drown proofing. They actually taught us to do that in a number of my trainings in the Army too, around the water, about taking your pants off and tying them and then filling them with air, putting them around your neck and stuff. So
you could use the cap too. It helped a little bit, but not a lot. But you had to learn how to swim, or they would make you learn how to swim.
So when you finished basic training, you went to Norman, Oklahoma for what, aviation ordnance school, right?
Yeah, I was up at Norman for 6 months, learning all about ammunition, explosives, and taking guns apart, putting them back together. We had to put a 50 caliber machine gun, take it apart, and put it back together blindfolded in case you were out in the dark
Yeah.
and couldn't have a light. You had to learn where all the pieces went.
Well, you know what? I mean, I know from experience, a 50 cal can be hard enough to take apart and put together with light. Because I had one on my armored tracks on 2 of my assignments in the Army, and they can be a tricky piece of weaponry, especially trying to set the headspace and timing correctly so it'll fire. So
Yeah.
I can just imagine trying to do it in the dark.
Yeah, we were blindfolded to do that job. But, I passed it.
So what were some of the other things that you did in ordnance school? You were working with a lot of the explosive ordnance, right?
Yeah, no, we didn't have a lot of stuff there, but it was small stuff, and mostly with ammunition and learning how to load the guns and stuff like that to make sure everything worked properly.
Okay, so you said you were there for 6 months, you said?
Yes, the school was 6 months long.
Yeah, so when you finished there, I guess you were kind of fortunate because then they sent you off to Monterey, California, didn't they?
Yes, there was air base west of Monterey. Fort Ord was out that way, and this Navy base was out there. And we trained squadrons there. We had squadrons fly out, you know. But the good thing about being there, the fog come in early, so we had to secure everything and head for the beach. So it wasn't a bad duty there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Monterey's a pretty town.
Well, I hear some guys talk about how great it is being stationed out to the Naval Yard in San Diego and some of those places. And they're talking about even today how much they love it out in that area, you know, with the weather, the beach, and everything else.
Oh, it was nice.
So how long were you in Monterey?
I was there about 2 months, and then we had to go up to Versailles, California, to do night training, and we were up there for 2 weeks, and then we came back to Monterey, and I was shipped to Fallon, Nevada, or Nevada, however you pronounce it. That was a little town east of Reno, about 65 miles, and the town was about between 2,000 and 3,000 population. But they had the naval training base out there, and I had an overseas address. All my mail was censored, went through the fleet post office.
Huh.
So I don't know why that happened, but that's the way it was set up.
So when you went out there to Nevada, you went out to train squadrons for aircraft carriers. So
Yeah.
exactly what were you doing?
Well, we had to take care of the armor on the plane, the guns, the bomb racks, torpedo racks, and stuff like that. I primarily worked on torpedo bombers, the crew I was in.
Oh, okay.
And we had to load ammunition and wings. The biggest thing we had then was a 20 millimeter cannon. And we had a 50 caliber machine gun in the turret on a TBM, a torpedo bomber. And we had a pyramid lake in the Fallon that we called them fish, but they dropped these torpedoes on the targets up there. And we had bombing ranges and fighter pilot ranges and stuff like that. And I'm sure there was a lot of deer and antelope killed with some pilot.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting that. So you were not only working on the ordnance on those aircraft, were you training other crews to go out on the carriers to work on them too, or?
No, we just trained every 2 months. We'd have a new group come in, and we'd train them for all the operations that we had there at the base, and then they'd head off to everywhere they were supposed to go. But
Yeah,
they were there around 2 months training.
I can imagine that would be pretty interesting. Especially knowing that you were training the the dive bomber crews too, to go out on the aircraft carriers, because some of the more modern, how can I say, World War II movies, like the newest movie they made, Midway. Some of the scenes in that movie were really incredible to watch, what those guys through the way those dive bombers went through to drop those bombs too.
Yeah, it took a lot of G's out of you. The prettiest plane we had was a Corsair. It looked like a seagull.
Yeah.
And the wings all folded up. That was the prettiest plane we had. Of course, out in Nevada, it snowed quite a bit. And, of course, when the runways were covered with snow, they ceased operations for that day. So it wasn't a bad service. I mean, bad place to be. We had duty, Liberty. We could go into Reno, which was 65 miles to the west of us. And you've seen these old movies where the train's coming into the town with a baggage car and a passenger car. That's the kind of train that ran into Fallon, Nevada from Reno.
So that's how you guys got back and forth then.
Yeah, well, that's what we wrote. That's what we came from to Reno and from California and got on this train and went up to Fallon.
Well, so I forgot that when we first started. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you, what year were you drafted?
What year? 1943.
Yeah. Okay, so about midpoint through the war is when you were drafted.
I mean, what's sir?
Midpoint.
Yeah, about midway through World War II. 1943 is when you were drafted.
Yeah, it was. World War II was all over August 1945, so
right,
it was about halfway through.
Yeah, I forgot to ask you that when we first started. Yeah, because I see that you served. Actually, you were discharged later in 1946 after serving about 3 years, right?
Yeah, nearly 3 years.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, Gene, even over a 3-year time of duty with the Navy during World War II, did you have any particular memory with the Navy that stood out to you still today? Any one particular experience that really you still remember today?
Well, I enjoyed the crew I worked with. There was about 8 of us men that took care of one plane. And, it was an honor to serve our nation, even though I wasn't shipped overseas. But we were doing a job, and it took us all working together.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed the crew I worked with.
So you sound like a lot of my other veterans who come on the show that talk about the relationship you had with your fellow veterans and the camaraderie that you had with those people that you served with.
Yeah, there was a lot of good guys, and like I say, I don't remember any of the names. That's been 70-something years ago. So.
Yeah. I think we can cut you some slack on that. Okay, Gene. Well, we're going to take just a quick break here, and when we come back to our audience, we're going to continue our conversation with Gene and talk to him a little bit about what he was doing since he left the Navy. So we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Stay there.
In service of our nation, you gave everything you had. You sacrificed your comfort, your peace, and sometimes even your well-being. Over 3 decades, Hill and Ponton has helped to be a guiding light for veterans seeking their rightful disability benefits. When our heroes are in need, we are not just lawyers, we're an ally, a team who understands the struggles you faced. If you're a veteran seeking the benefits you deserve, let us stand with you on this journey, because every battle deserves a hero, and no hero should fight alone.
All right, everyone, and welcome back. And just want to again thank our sponsors for helping us with the show and supporting the show. You've been watching the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And of course, our guest tonight is World War II veteran Gene Bomar. And Gene, we were talking before the break about your experiences in the Navy and serving until 1946, where you were finally discharged. And so when you left the Navy, I'm assuming that you kind of went back home and started a new career, right?
Yeah, let me back up to the Navy, Paul.
Okay.
From Fallon, Nevada, I was shipped to Treasure Island, California, and I had shore patrol duty for 6 months.
Oh, okay.
Now, that was quite an experience. So I got
I'll
discharged in Shoemaker, California. I was fixing to go to the Philippines, and when I received enough points to get discharged. So I was discharged from Shoemaker, California, and came back to Gainesville, Texas.
Okay, so you came back home, right?
Right.
And so what did you? I understand that once you finished your time in the Navy, that you spent about 28 years working for the National Supply and Armco. That's where you spend most of your civilian life? Yeah. So how did you go from what you were doing in the Navy? How did you go from what you were doing in the Navy to a career like that? How did that happen?
Well, it was an oil field manufacturing company that built a plant in Gainesville, Texas, and I applied for a job and went to work in October of '54 and worked for 28 years. We made all kinds of oil field equipment. I was a senior scheduler for Drawworks, and I worked there until 1982, and I took early retirement.
So you were they did a lot of oil drilling, weren't they? Didn't they do a lot of oil drilling?
No, we did. We made equipment to drill for oil. We made pumping units, or some call them pump jacks. We made drawworks to run the rigs. We made crane. We made torque converters. We made multiplex pumps. We made anything pertaining to the oil field for them to drill for oil. That was our company's main product.
Yeah. So was there any particular reason when you went to apply there that made you apply? Was that something you were interested in, or was it just something that was there and you thought it would be a good career to go into?
I was looking for a better job. I was a parts manager and a bookkeeper for a Chrysler dealership in Gainesville, Texas.
Okay.
So this company came in here and they paid good wages. So I applied, and I was the third man that was hired in the new company. There were 2 other guys and a foreman working in a weld shop. And I had to learn how to drive a fork truck because National was closing a plant in Toledo, Ohio, and moving it to Gainesville, Texas. So I had to learn how to drive a fork truck and unload equipment that was coming in from the other plant.
Yeah, I bet that was kind of interesting. Did you have anybody really teach you, or did you kind of learn by trial and error?
Well, it was a lot of it was by trial and error. I had a teacher, but he wasn't around all the time, so I had to learn a lot of tricks myself.
Well, hopefully you didn't get in too much trouble wrecking that thing while you were learning, right?
Right. I never did tear up anything, so I didn't cost the company any money.
Well, evidently not, since they kept you around for 28 years, right?
Yeah, and the reason I took early retirement in 1982 in January, I had 30 draw works on back order. And July the 1st, I had one. The oil field collapsed, and
Oh,
they were laying off people and canceling equipment orders and stuff like that. So I took, there was 9 of us out of 1,200 people that were could retire. So I took early retirement.
well, you figured you had spent 28 years there. You know, it couldn't have been too early of a retirement after all those years.
Well, it was one of the best jobs I ever worked at.
Yeah, it's, you know,
We had
so many things have changed nowadays compared to before when you were younger and working. You know, nowadays people go from job to job to career. And it would seem like back in the days when you guys were coming up and, you know, you guys were spending time in careers, it seemed like a lot of people back then spend more time working for one company or one organization for most of their life before they retired.
Well, yeah, this was a good company to work for.
Yeah.
It was a division of Armco Steel, which is now is Cleveland Cliffs has bought out Armco Steel, so they're still making oil field equipment, but the oil field has changed now. Used to you had about 8 or 10 people on a rig. Now you have 2 guys punching buttons.
Yeah.
So everything is automatic now, automated.
So what have you been doing since you retired back in the 80s? What have you been doing with yourself?
Well, for 10 years after I retired, I started a lawn service business, and I was outside. When I worked for National, I was inside all the time. But with the lawn service business, I was outside, and I enjoyed that. And I did that until 1992, and I retired again.
So you had enough of that for a little while, right? So you worked
Well,
outside in lawn service, and
I tell you, I tell you the reason I retired. I had about 24 lawns that I took care of.
yeah.
And that year we had rain nearly every other night.
Oh,
And I got tired of fighting the weather. And I had there was a fellow working across the yard from me. I said, "Would you like to have some more yards?" He said, "Yeah, I sure would." So I just gave them to him.
well, I tell you what, I did work similar to that when I was still in high school in our housing development. I had this gentleman that had about 6 houses in our housing development, and I took care of the yards for his 6 houses, and just 6 of them kept me busy enough.
Yeah, it was hard work, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I was young and younger.
Yeah, younger. Yeah, there you go.
And
So
I enjoyed the work.
once you retired from your yard business, did you take up anything else, or did you finally decide to kind of take it easy and retire?
Well, I belonged to a travel club and Good Sam's Travel Club.
Yeah.
And then we'd go camping once a month, and I did a lot of camping and took a lot of bus tours. I've been all over the United States on bus tours and enjoyed that. So I have a lot of memories from doing that. But for the past 25 years, I haven't done very much.
Well, you know, you figure at 99, the past 25 years means you started out when you were in your 70s. At that age, I would think people wouldn't expect you to have to do that much.
Yeah, in 2015, 2014, I took honor flight to Washington, D.C.
Ah,
There was 44 World War II veterans on the plane, and we all had a guardian that took care
yeah.
of us. And then we had nurses and doctors and press, and I guess we had 100 people in that deal. That was a trip that I'll never forget. We saw all the monuments, the World War II monument,
Hmm.
Vietnam and Korean, and some of it was sad to look at it,
We,
especially the Vietnam Wall. That was heartbreaking.
well, living up here in Northern Virginia like I do, I've traveled in and out of Reagan National Airport quite a bit. And several times that I've been there to travel, I've seen those honor flights come in with those big groups of veterans on them. And, it's always great to see those folks come in town because, you guys deserve that treatment. You deserve to be brought in and shown around and make sure that people know they appreciate what you did.
Yeah. One thing I did after I retired too, I had a friend, Teresa Stevens, that had a ranch, and I was a city boy, and she was a country girl, and I would go out and help her on the ranch, baling the hay and hauling the hay and building fence, and I enjoyed doing that. But then I had both knees operated on and both hips, and that kind of put a stop to doing a lot of work like that.
Yeah.
One other thing I did after I retired, I made fishing lures. My dad and I went fishing every Saturday, and we made our own fishing lures to catch fish here in Lake Texoma. So
Oh,
I
okay.
had a lot of odd jobs, but I
So
enjoyed them all.
So you've kind of done it all. Well, I wanted to ask you about something there that I know that you get to do, and I'm sure that is something that you really cherishes. I know for about the last 10 years, you've been able to ride in the Medal of Honor parade there in Gainesville, Texas, each year, don't you?
Yeah, Gainesville is classified as a Medal of Honor city,
Yeah.
and every second Saturday in April, we have a parade. They bring in Medal of Honor veterans. They get in here on Wednesday evening and spend the whole weekend here in Gainesville, going to schools and different organizations, speaking to different people. And my son-in-law owns a convertible, so I get to ride in a convertible, a red convertible. And I've done that for the past 10 years. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to next year. I'll be 100 next year, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that's a pretty good honor for you to be able to do that, and
Yeah,
especially see
it
those
really
young
is. I
veterans
mean,
come in.
and we meet a lot of people. Gainesville has a lot of people on that day,
Yeah.
and we
Well,
get to
Gene,
ride down the main street. Everybody waving and hollering and shouting to us and waving
yeah, I mean, I know
saluting.
what a big deal the Veterans Day Parade is here where I live, and my wife and I live right here in Old Town Manassas, and we live right along the parade route. And the Veterans Day parades here are really incredible. So, it's kind of an honor to be able to watch those things and see all the stuff that they do. But I wanted to
Yeah,
ask. Oh, go
my
ahead,
son,
Gene.
my son-in-law's name is Mike Martin. He lives in Carrollton, Texas, which is about 50 miles from Gainesville, so it's not very far.
Yeah. So he brings a convertible over, Wolf, so you can ride in the parade each time.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the advantages, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Well, Gene, I have to tell you, it's been an honor to have you on the show this evening, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. But I wanted to ask you one more question before we go. If there was just one message you could leave with our audience, what would that message be? What would you like to share?
Paul, I'm a Christian man. I would ask the people of America to pray for unity. We need unity. We need to love each other as God loves us. So that's my main object in life, is to have unity with each other. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping the American people would put that in their heart and pray for our nation.
Well,
It's
you
a
know,
good nation.
that's a pretty good thing to wish for, for especially now at this point in your life and all the things that you've seen. But I just want to tell you, we really appreciate you and your service and taking the time to come on the show with us tonight. It's been an honor to have you on, and I want to thank you.
Well, it's an honor for me to have a great grandson to meet his granddad. Alex is my great grandson.
Yeah, and then
and you're his granddad.
Yeah, and he's doing well in the service now too, so he's kind of continuing on the legacy, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, it's been an honor to be on your program, Paul, and I appreciate your invite.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. And
God bless.
There's a message from TD says, "Thank you for your service, sir." So we want to just thank you, Gene, again.
God bless America.
All right, thank you, Gene. And for those of you out there who have been watching the show, as you know that we always want to provide you additional information on where you can get help. So if you take a look on the screen, you're going to see it there. Simmons, Hanley, and Conroy, they're one of those legal organizations that help veterans with mesothelioma and asbestos-related diseases. Take a look at their website. They have a lot of services and things that they can offer you. And one thing that's interesting, a lot of these attorney groups cover different things for veterans. Just like our sponsor that we have, they cover veterans benefits and veterans disability, whereas a lot of the other ones, Hill and Ponton, are disability attorneys, whereas the Simmons Hanley group, they actually cover specific types of diseases that veterans have been affected by. So, if you're out there, you're looking for information, check them out, simmonsfirm.com. You'll be able to find out just what it is they can do for you. So we want to thank all of you for watching the show tonight. Again, we want to thank our guest, Gene Bomar, for joining us. And all of you that are out there, we hope to see you on our next show.
Yeah.